Hey everyone, my name is Khan and this is episode 10 of the SAT Reading and Writing Mastery Series. This is the final episode and it'll cover all of the subtopics regarding the reading and writing section of the SAT. Last episode, I knocked out boundaries, which is all about punctuation. So if you haven't watched that one, the playlist should be on my channel. And today we'll be covering the final topic, which is form structure and sense. Now, here's what it actually is, right? You have grammar, you have subject, verb, agreement, verb tenses, pronouns, modifiers, possessives, and that's it. Here's why you should care about the subject, right? Or this topic per se. You'll see roughly 7 to 8 of these every single test combined with boundaries. So that'll be a quarter of your entire reading and writing score coming from grammar rules. And those rules don't change. So if you can memorize or understand those rules, those should be free points for you. So today we'll master how do you identify form, structure, and sense questions, the 6 sub-skills that get tested, a strategy that you can use, progressive practice, and avoiding some traps. All right, let's start with the basics. What even is form structure and sense? Form structure and sense equals grammar and word usage questions that test whether a sentence follows the conventions of standard English. It's one of 2 standard English conventions question types on the digital SAT, and the other one is boundaries, which we've already covered. Boundaries test punctuation, whereas form structure and sense test everything else like verbs, pronouns, modifiers, and possessives. Now, the tricky part is that both questions use the same question prompt, so they'll both ask, which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English, word for word. So how do you tell them apart? It's quite simple. You have to look at the answer choices. If the 4 answer choices have the same words but different punctuation, then it'll be boundaries. But if the answer choices have different words, different verb forms, different pronouns, or words rearranged in different order, then it's going to be form structure and sense. All right, here are the 6 sub-skills tested, and again, these things will, in my opinion, take you a bit of time to get in your head. It's a lot of theory compared to the other topics, and actually identifying the specific type of sub-skill that you get for a specific question can be quite tricky. Number 1 is subject, agreement, verb. The verb, must match its subject in number. What that means is if you have a singular subject, then you have a singular verb, and if you have a plural subject, then you have a plural verb. So the dog runs versus the dogs run. Again, I'll say that again. The dog runs versus the dogs run. Now, I'll expand on, there's another slide that should help you regarding that. Number 2 is the pronoun antecedent agreement. So a pronoun has to match the noun it's replacing. If the noun is singular, then the pronoun is singular. If it's plural, then the pronoun is plural. And there will be examples coming up on that. Number 3 is verb tense consistency. So the tense of the verb has to match the time frame of the passage. If everything is in past tense, then the blank should probably be past tense as well. If we're talking about present or future, then it should be present and future. Number 4, finite versus non-finite verbs. So this one trips people up. A finite verb is a complete verb that can be the main action of a sentence. A non-finite verb, like a participle or infinitive, cannot. So, and I know you probably don't know what that means, but I will expand on that later. Every sentence at least has one finite verb. Number 5 is subject modifier placement. So a modifying phrase has to sit directly next to the noun it describes. If it doesn't, then you get a dangling modifier and the sentence is wrong. And number 6, plurals, possessive, and contractions. Dogs versus dog with a apostrophe versus dogs with the apostrophe at the end. It's versus it is versus it is. No apostrophe means plural, apostrophe means ownership or a contraction. So these are 6 skills, and I highly recommend that after this, you do research this on your own, because I'd be very surprised if you can nail all of this down in just one quick video. Anyway, the 5-step strategy here. Number 1 is to read the full sentence before and after the blank. Don't jump to the answer choices first because you need the context. What's the subject? What tense is the rest of the passage in? Is there a modifier? You can't answer that if you skip the choices. Number 2 is to identify, look at the answer choices and ask, how do they differ? Are the verb forms changing? Like, is versus are the tenses changing? walked versus walks? Are the words rearranging? Are there apostrophes? The way the choices differ tell you exactly which of the 6 sub-skills is being tested. Step 3 is to find, so find the key element. If it's a subject-verb agreement, find the true subject. If it's verb tense, find the time frame. If it's a modifier question, find who or what the modifier is describing. This is basically detective work. And then 4 is to eliminate, right? So cross out anything that violates the grammar rules. Usually you can cut 2 to 3 questions just from this. The SAT is pretty generous with wrong answers on grammar questions because grammar is quite black and white. It's either right or wrong. There's no in between. And finally, confirm. Plug in your answer and reread it in a complete sense. Does it follow a grammar rule? Follow the grammar rule? Does it flow? If it's yes, then you can lock it in and move on. Now, here's a quick identification guide. This is pretty valuable. And again, if the choices differ in is versus are, was versus were, has versus have, the same tense but a different number, that's subject-verb agreement. The SAT is testing whether you can match the verb to its subject. If the choices differ in walked versus walks versus will walk versus had walked, the same verb but different tenses, that's verb tense. The SAT is testing whether you can read the surrounding context to pick up the time frame. If the choices mix discovering versus discovered versus to discover, then that's a participle, a finite verb, and an infinitive. That's finite versus non-finite. The SAT is testing whether the sentence needs a complete verb or not. If the choices have the same words but rearranging in different order, that's modifier placement. So the SAT is testing whether you know which noun needs to follow a modifying phrase. If the choices differ in he versus him versus his, or it versus its versus they, that's a pronoun agreement. And if the choices differ in dogs versus dogs with the changing apostrophes, that's plurals and possessive. Now, in detail, again, this is something, out of all the SAT reading writing topics, this is something where you're going to have to actually read the theory quite a lot and probably reference back to it. So you might have to take a screenshot of this and look back at it when you're doing your practice questions. But first of all, the subject-verb agreement. We did cover this already, but the rule is quite simple. A singular subject takes a singular verb. So, for example, the collection of rare stamps is valuable, not are valuable. The subject is collection, which is singular, and not stamps, right? So that's exactly how the SAT tricks you. They hide the real subject behind prepositional phrases and appositives. Of rare stamps is just a prepositional phrase sitting between the subject and the verb. Again, a lot of these things I absolutely understand if you don't get it. What I would recommend is that you do research this in your own time. For the sake of this video, I'm going to leave this here, and I'm not going to go through everything, because if I were to go through each of these subtests and the things in detail here, this video would probably drag on for the better part of an hour. So you research this in your own time. A lot of this is going to come naturally, or you already know it, okay? So elimination of wrong answers. Trap number 1, which is the nearby noun. This is the number 1 most common trick, right? So for subject-verb agreements, the SAT places a noun right before the verb that doesn't match the true subject. The collection of rare stamps are valuable. You know, your ears hear stamps are and think it's fine, but stamps isn't the subject, collection is. So cross out the prepositional phase, find the real subject, and then match it. Trap number 2 is the sounds right trap. So many students will just choose whatever sounds right. This is unreliable, especially with complex academic sentences and hard questions. There will be many phrases and sentences and, words that you've never actually heard in real life. And so your instinct will not be as refined with regards to, easy or medium questions. So refer to the rule if you can, and then if you can't, then you might just have to fall back on your ears and determine then. Trap number 3 is the tense mismatch. So students default to the most common sounding tense without checking the surrounding sentences for time clues. So the SAT passages, the context is always determines the correct tense. So read the sentence before and after the blank, and the answer is in the context, right? And then trap number 4 is the wrong modifier. So on modifier placement questions, the answer choices rearrange the same words into different orders. Students will get distracted by the length of the choices or the content. So you need to ignore all of that and look at which noun appears right after the comma, because that'll be the only thing that matters. And I know that I just covered a lot of content and substance, and it's completely fine if you don't understand it. We're going to go through some practice questions, put our strategy in place, and determine how we can actually do this, right? So let's begin with our easy questions. The timestamps are in the description for you to jump around, and you can pause the video and try out this one. All right, so this one says, in the late 1960s, inspired in part by the sight of laundry hanging on a clothesline, African-American abstract painter Sam Gilliam began to create his iconic drape paintings. He applied bold, saturated hues to large canvases and blank them from ceilings or walls, causing the drooping fabric to cascade in dramatic loops and curves. The choices are A, to have suspended, B, suspending, C, to suspend, and D, suspended. So using our strategy, step one is to read, right? So he applied bold, saturated hues to large canvases and blank them. So we've got the word and connecting two things. So he applied and he blank. Using step two is to identify, right? So the choice gives us to have suspended, suspending, to suspend, and suspended. These are different verb forms. They're called infinitives or a participle and a past tense verb, right? So this is a finite versus non-finite question. Essentially, the key element is the word and is creating a parallel structure here, okay? So he applied and blank. Whatever comes after and needs to match the form of applied. Applied is a past tense finite verb, so the blank also needs to have a past tense finite verb. So step four is to eliminate, right? So to have suspended, that's non-finite and it doesn't match applied, so it's not going to be A. B is suspending, so that's a participle, it's non-finite, so that's going to be gone. Again, if you don't understand what I'm saying, I highly recommend that you look through the basics and search up, what's the difference between non-finite and finite verbs and whatnot, right? So C, to suspend, that's another infinitive. That's not going to be the answer. And D is suspended, that's past tense and it's a finite verb and it matches applied perfectly. So he applied and suspended. It's a parallel structure. And so when you connect two verbs, they need to be in the same form. Past and past, they're both past tense when you connect them together and both sides are balanced. The answer here is going to be D. Okay, you can pause the video and try out this one on your own. Every last second of Space Shuttle mission STS-79, which lasted 10 days and 3 hours, blank carefully monitored by a team of experts. So the choices are A, have been, B, are, C, was, D, were. Step two is to identify. So the choices are have been, are, was, were. The same verb to be, but different forms. So some are singular, some are plural, and the tenses differ. And this is the subject-verb agreement, which is combined with present and future and past tense, right? So step three is to find, and here's where it gets tricky. What's the subject in this passage? The sentence says, every last second of Space Shuttle mission STS-79, which lasted 10 days and 3 hours, blank carefully monitored. So first, let's cross out the non-restrictive clause, which lasted 10 days and 3 hours, right? That's extra information between the commas, which is gone. We don't need that. Let's cross out the prepositional phrase as well, which is, in this instance, going to be off Space Shuttle mission STS-79. Gone. What's left? Every last second. That is... Okay, so here's the key for every last second. The subject is every last second, and the key is that every makes it singular. Every student, every day, every second is always singular, and this is a past event. The mission already happened, so we need singular past tense. So we've identified what tense we're looking for. Step four is to eliminate. So A, have been. That's plural present. That's plural present perfect. So not only is it the wrong number, but it's also the wrong tense. B says are. That's plural present, so that's wrong on both counts. So it's not going to be our answer. C, was. That's singular tense, and that's exactly what we need. That's probably going to be our answer. D, were. That's plural and past, so that's plural past, that's the right tense but the wrong number. So the answer here is going to be C. Now this is a nearby noun trap, so your ear hears 10 days and 3 hours right before the blank and wants to pick a plural verb. But those days and hours aren't the subject. They're hiding inside a non-restrictive clause, which is essentially the piece of information in the middle in its simplest form. The real subject is every last second, which is singular. So you need to cross out the noise, find the subject, and then determine what the correct answer is going to be. This is the final question for the remainder of this video. It's going to be the last hard question. And again, I do plan on releasing more resources to help you with this subject and subtopic specifically, because many of the grammatical foundational elements that you require as a prerequisite for this topic, I think aren't being taught enough to students. And if you're watching this so far through that easy and medium question and you don't understand what I'm talking about, when I'm talking about, for example, singular verbs, plural verbs, subject verb agreements, non-restrictive clauses, a lot of these things are far more than, they're not like other SAT reading writing topics where you just look at the structure, you memorize the strategy, and then you apply it, right? So I do get that this will be a really hard topic for a lot of people, but if you do understand what I'm talking about so far, this is the hard question. You can pause the video now and try it. Okay. In assessing the films of Japanese director Akira Kurosawa, blank have missed his equally deep engagement with Japanese artistic traditions such as no theater. So choices A, many critics have focused on Kurosawa's use of Western literary sources, but B, Kurosawa's use of Western literary sources have been the focus of many critics who, C, there are many critics who have focused on Kurosawa's use of Western literary sources, but they are. D, the focus of many critics have been on Kurosawa's use of Western literary sources, they. Okay, don't let the length of these answer choices scare you. Let's use our core strategy here. So let's identify the answer choices, right? Let's look at the sentence structure, and immediately this is a modifier placement question, right? The sentence opens with a participle phrase. In assessing the films of Japanese director Akira Kurosawa, so who is assessing the films? It's going to be critics. Not Kurosawa's use, not the focus, not there. Critics are the ones who are doing the assessing. So the noun itself, the noun that follows the comma must be a word that refers to critics or the word critics itself. Step 4 is to eliminate. So B starts with Kurosawa's use of Western literary sources. Is Kurosawa's use assessing films? No. So this is not going to be the answer. C starts with there are many critics. The word right after the comma is there. So that's a dummy subject, not the actual people doing the assessing. So it's grammatically clunky as well. It's not going to be C. D starts with the focus of many critics. Is the focus assessing films? No, because the focus is not a person. So it's not going to be A. And the answer is going to be A. A starts with many critics have focused, many critics follows the comma, and the critics are the ones assessing, plus many critics have focused but have missed, creates a clean parallel structure. So the answer is going to be A. It's a classic modifier placement question at the hard level, and the trick isn't that the grammar is harder, it's that the answer choices are longer and more confusing. The rule still stays the same, who's doing the action, the opening phrase, that person that follows, the comma. All right, congrats, you made it to the end. Let's go through a quick recap. And again, I'll reiterate this again. If you didn't understand a lot of what I have spoken about this video, you have some core foundational elements that will that I can't teach you within the span of 20 to 30 minutes. It is going to take you a few hours at least to go through the grammatical foundations. The 6 sub-skills that, again, as my this slide that I told you screenshot had, was subject verb agreement, pronoun antecedent agreement, verb tense consistency, finite versus non-finite verbs, subject modifier placement, plurals, possessives, and contractions. Those are your 6 skills under this whole category, and you have to learn them one by one. You can refer to my screenshot as a basic overview, but I'd again recommend study it extensively so you know how to actually approach these questions grammatically in a grammatically correct way. The 5-step strategy, right? Read, identify, find, eliminate, confirm. And the fastest way to identify the sub-skills is to look at how the answer choices differ. So verb numbers, tense, verb type, finite versus non-finite. And again, avoiding the 4 traps. We didn't see all the 4 traps in the questions that we covered. If you go through more practices, you will see them on your own. And again, as always, my part of my OER is providing education equity for all, and a gamified approach to the SAT I've made on Roblox. It essentially allows you to compete against friends, go through the question bank, and you can search it up yourself. It's completely free, and if you'd like to play it, you can. Again, this is the last episode for the SAT reading writing topic, but that does not mean that I won't be covering more specific foundational videos regarding this topic, especially because it's very different to many of the subjects that we've covered, and that's exactly why I left it for last. But from here on, I will be covering the SAT math topics. But besides that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.